There comes a time in life when we realize that not everyone who enters our path is meant to stay. Some people bring joy, love, and growth, while others bring negativity, pain, and destruction. Toxic people drain your energy, disturb your peace, and keep you from becoming the best version of yourself. The truth is, you don't need to fight with them, argue with them, or try to change them. What you need to do is something far more powerful. Take control of your own energy and boundaries so strongly that toxic people naturally remove themselves from your life and never come back. Self-awareness is the foundation of protecting yourself from toxic people. It is the ability to step back, observe your own thoughts and emotions, and clearly recognize the impact that others have on your life. Without awareness, toxic people can easily manipulate you, drain you, and keep you entangled in cycles of negativity. But the moment you become aware, everything changes. You begin to see who they truly are and how their presence influences your energy, your peace, and your growth. Toxic people often thrive in the shadows of confusion. They use manipulation, guilt-tripping, or subtle disrespect to keep you second, guessing yourself. They twist your kindness into weakness and make you believe that you're the problem, when in reality, it is their behavior that poisons the connection. But awareness cuts through this fog. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly you see the mess that was always there, but hidden in the dark. Becoming self-aware means paying attention to how you feel around certain people. Do you feel anxious before meeting them? Do you feel drained after spending time with them? Do you constantly feel judged, belittled, or misunderstood in their presence? These are red flags your body and mind are signaling, and awareness allows you to listen. Instead of brushing off those feelings or making excuses for their behavior, you accept the truth: this person is not good for your well-being. When you lack self-awareness, you fall into a cycle of tolerating mistreatment. You might tell yourself, maybe they didn't mean it, or I'll just ignore it. But deep down, the damage continues. Self-awareness shifts this pattern. It empowers you to stop tolerating what drains your spirit. It teaches you to draw a line between what you allow and what you reject. You begin to see that protecting your mental and emotional health is not selfish, it is necessary. Awareness also helps you identify your own role in allowing toxic people into your life. Sometimes, without realizing it, we accept less than we deserve because of our fears, insecurities, or need for validation. Self-awareness shines a light on those inner wounds. You begin to ask yourself, why do I feel the need to keep someone in my life who constantly hurts me? Why am I afraid to let go? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are the beginning of growth. Awareness pushes you to heal so you no longer invite or tolerate toxicity. Another powerful aspect of self-awareness is clarity. Once you see toxic behavior for what it is, you stop falling for the cycles of apology and betrayal. Toxic people often use charm or false promises to pull you back in after hurting you. But when you are self-aware, you no longer confuse words with actions. You look at patterns, not excuses. And patterns don't lie. This clarity saves you from wasting time on people who have no intention of changing. Self-awareness also strengthens your intuition. That inner voice, the gut feeling that something isn't right, becomes louder when you practice awareness. Instead of silencing it, you trust it. Toxic people may try to convince you that you're overreacting, but self-awareness keeps you grounded in your truth. It tells you your feelings are valid, your peace matters, your boundaries are real. The greatest gift of self-awareness is that it gives you choice. Once you recognize toxicity, you no longer move blindly. You can decide whether to distance yourself, cut ties, or limit interaction. And because you are fully aware of the consequences, you no longer feel guilty for protecting yourself. You realize that choosing peace over chaos is not wrong. It's a sign of wisdom. In the end, self-awareness is the first shield against toxic people because it prevents them from disguising their intentions and draining your energy unnoticed. With awareness, you stop being a victim of manipulation and start being the guardian of your own life. You see clearly, you feel deeply, and you protect yourself unapologetically. And once you raise that shield of awareness, toxic people will find no space in your world because their power dissolves the moment you begin to truly see. Toxic people thrive on reactions. Their energy is fueled by conflict, attention, and drama. They provoke, manipulate, or criticize not because they seek truth, but because they crave control. Every time you argue with them, defend yourself, or try to explain your side, you hand them exactly what they want: your energy. But the moment you choose silence and detachment, their power begins to fade. They cannot survive without your emotional response, and when you stop feeding them, they lose their hold over you. Silence is not weakness, silence is strength. It is a conscious choice to rise above conflict instead of getting dragged into it. When a toxic person tries to insult or manipulate you, they expect you to react. They expect you to become defensive, to shout, to plead, or to justify yourself. But when you refuse to respond, when you meet their negativity with calm silence, you rob them of their weapon. They cannot fight with someone who won't fight back. And that frustrates them more than anything else. Detachment works hand in hand with silence. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop being controlled by their actions or words. It is the emotional distance that protects your peace. Imagine someone trying to provoke you, but instead of reacting, you stay calm, unaffected, and focused on yourself. That's detachment. It is the realization that you do not owe anyone an emotional reaction, especially not to those who thrive on chaos. Toxic people often use guilt, anger, or manipulation to pull you into their storm. They might accuse you of being selfish if you set boundaries or silent if you refuse to argue. But detachment teaches you to stay rooted in your own truth. You no longer need to prove your worth to them. You no longer allow their opinions to dictate how you feel about yourself. Their storm may rage, but you remain the calm in the center, untouched by the chaos. Choosing silence and detachment is also a way of conserving your energy. Every argument, every heated discussion, every attempt to defend yourself drains you emotionally. Over time, this leaves you exhausted, anxious, and powerless. But when you refuse to engage, you keep your energy intact. You save your strength for what truly matters: your growth, your peace, and your future. Toxic people cannot drain what you refuse to give. Another powerful effect of silence and detachment is that it exposes toxic people's behavior for what it really is. When you refuse to react, their actions become more obvious. Others can see how unreasonable, manipulative, or aggressive they truly are. Your silence shines a light on their negativity because it highlights the contrast between your calmness and their chaos. In this way, silence is not just self-protection, it's also a mirror that reflects their toxicity back at them. Of course, silence and detachment require discipline. At first, you may feel the urge to respond, to defend yourself, to correct the lies or insults thrown your way. But with practice, you learn that not every battle deserves your energy. Not every attack requires a defense. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is to say nothing at all. That silence speaks louder than any argument. And here's the truth: toxic people hate silence and detachment because it starves them. They crave the fuel of your reactions. They thrive when they know they can get under your skin. But when you stay detached, they eventually give up. They realize there is no control to be gained, no drama to feed on, no power to steal. Slowly, they drift away, searching for someone else who will give them the reaction you refuse to provide. Silence and detachment don't just take away their power, they return it to you. They remind you that your peace is in your hands, not in anyone else's control. You choose when to speak and when to walk away. You choose where your energy goes. And when you master this choice, toxic people will never again have a grip on your life. They may try, but without your attention, they cannot survive. Boundaries are not walls meant to isolate you. They are protective gates that safeguard your mental, emotional, and even physical well-being. They define where you end and another person begins. Without boundaries, toxic people can freely invade your space, dictate your emotions, and control your life. But when you create and enforce strong boundaries, you send a clear message: my peace matters, my energy matters, my life matters. And toxic people who rely on crossing limits quickly realize they cannot thrive where boundaries exist. The truth is, toxic individuals dislike boundaries because boundaries strip them of their control. They want unrestricted access to your kindness, your time, and your energy. They push, manipulate, and test you to see how much you will tolerate. If you let them walk over you once, they will do it again and again. But boundaries stop this cycle. Boundaries are your way of saying, this is what I will accept and this is what I will not. And when you stand firm, you protect yourself from being used, drained, or disrespected. Setting boundaries begins with clarity. You must first know what drains you, what triggers you, and what makes you uncomfortable. Maybe it's people who constantly criticize, those who bring endless drama, or those who take but never give. Awareness of these patterns allows you to draw the line. For example, you might decide, I will not engage in conversations filled with negativity, or I will not allow anyone to speak to me disrespectfully. Once you know your limits, you can clearly express them. But boundaries are not just about words, they are about action. Toxic people may not respect your boundaries immediately. They might try to guilt, trip you, manipulate you, or accuse you of being selfish. This is their way of testing whether your boundaries are real or just temporary. That's why consistency is crucial. If you say no but later give in, you send the message that your limits can be ignored. But when you remain firm, when you stand by your words, toxic people understand that you are no longer easy to control. Boundaries also protect your energy. Think of your energy as currency. You only have a limited amount each day. If you allow toxic people to drain you, you will have nothing left for the things and people who actually matter. But by setting boundaries, you decide where your energy goes. You spend it on growth, positivity, and love, not on endless arguments, manipulation, or disrespect. Boundaries ensure that your energy is invested wisely. Another powerful aspect of boundaries is self-respect. When you create and enforce boundaries, you affirm your worth. You show yourself that you value your peace and refuse to settle for less. Toxic people hate this because they thrive on those who don't know their worth. But when you elevate your standards, they either adjust or disappear. In both cases, you win. It's also important to remember that boundaries are not meant to hurt others. Some people confuse boundaries with being cold or rude, but in reality, they are an act of love for yourself and for others. Healthy boundaries allow you to maintain relationships without resentment or exhaustion. They create space for mutual respect. With toxic people, however, boundaries serve as a filter. If they cannot respect your limits, they naturally remove themselves from your life. At first, setting boundaries may feel uncomfortable, especially if you've been used to pleasing others or avoiding conflict. But the discomfort is temporary. Over time, enforcing boundaries becomes second nature. You stop feeling guilty for saying no. You stop apologizing for protecting yourself. Instead, you begin to feel empowered, peaceful, and free. And here's the beauty: once boundaries are in place, toxic people rarely return. They realize they can no longer exploit you or take advantage of your kindness. They search for easier targets, leaving you with the space and energy to build a life filled with positivity and respect. In the end, boundaries are not barriers. They are bridges to a healthier, stronger version of yourself. They protect your peace, preserve your energy, and keep toxic people at a safe distance. When you know your worth and defend it with boundaries, you create a life where only respect, love, and genuine connection can exist. That is the true power of boundaries. They don't just keep toxicity out, they invite peace in. Toxic people often find their way into the lives of those who are wounded, insecure, or searching for validation. They sense weakness not because you are unworthy, but because pain can sometimes blur your vision and lower your defenses. If you carry unresolved wounds from the past, betrayal, neglect, rejection, or self-doubt, you may unconsciously allow toxic people to stay, hoping they will fill a void. But the truth is, they only deepen it. That's why healing yourself is the ultimate key to breaking the cycle. Once you heal, toxic people lose their grip on your life because they no longer have anything to feed on. Healing begins with self-reflection. You must first understand why you tolerated toxicity in the first place. Was it fear of being alone? Was it the hope that they might change? Was it because you doubted your own worth? These are hard questions, but they reveal the patterns that keep repeating. Toxic people exploit your fears and insecurities, but when you confront them head on, you take back control. You begin to see that no amount of pain from the past justifies keeping destructive people in your present. Another vital part of healing is forgiveness, not for them, but for yourself. Many people blame themselves for allowing toxic individuals to stay in their lives for too long. They replay moments in their head, asking, "Why didn't I leave sooner?" But self-blame only deepens the wound. Healing requires compassion toward yourself. You did the best you could with the awareness and strength you had at the time. Now, with wisdom and growth, you can make better choices. Forgiving yourself is the first step toward freedom. Healing also means building self-worth from within. Toxic people often make you feel small, unworthy, or dependent on their approval. But once you heal, you stop looking for validation from others. You begin to affirm your own value, regardless of what anyone says or does. You realize that you are enough as you are, and you no longer tolerate anyone who makes you feel less. This shift in self-worth makes it nearly impossible for toxic people to remain in your life because they cannot control someone who knows their own power. Another important element of healing is learning to love your own company. Many people hold on to toxic relationships because they fear loneliness. They would rather endure pain than face the silence of being alone. But healing transforms loneliness into solitude. You begin to enjoy your own presence, pursue your passions, and find fulfillment in self-growth. When you are no longer afraid of being alone, toxic people lose one of their greatest weapons. They cannot threaten you with abandonment because you are complete within yourself. Healing also brings clarity. You start to see toxic patterns for what they are instead of making excuses for them. You stop confusing manipulation with love, control with care, or drama with passion. Your healed perspective makes it easier to recognize red flags early on, so you no longer invite toxicity into your life. Instead, you attract relationships that are healthy, balanced, and supportive. Most importantly, healing breaks the cycle for the future. Many people unknowingly repeat toxic patterns across relationships, workplaces, and even friendships. Without healing, you might find yourself encountering the same types of toxic people over and over again. But once you heal, you break that pattern. You raise your standards, strengthen your boundaries, and refuse to settle for less than respect and peace. The toxic cycle ends with you, and here is the powerful truth. Toxic people are drawn to unhealed wounds because that's where they can exert control. But once you heal, you become untouchable. They may try to return, but they will no longer find the same version of you. They will find someone stronger, wiser, and no longer willing to entertain their games. In time, they disappear from your life entirely because they cannot coexist with the strength of a healed soul. In the end, healing yourself is not just about removing toxic people. It's about transforming your life. It's about turning wounds into wisdom, pain into power, and loneliness into peace. When you heal, you stop being a magnet for toxicity and start attracting love, respect, and positivity. That is how the cycle breaks. And once it breaks, toxic people will never again have a place in your life. Energy is one of the most powerful forces in life. It is invisible, yet it speaks louder than words. The kind of energy you carry, positive, negative, peaceful, or chaotic, creates an atmosphere around you that either attracts people or pushes them away. Toxic people, in particular, are drawn to environments where they can feed on weakness, confusion, or low self-worth. But when you begin to elevate your energy, when you cultivate peace, strength, and positivity within yourself, toxic people naturally find it uncomfortable to remain in your presence. Simply put, your energy determines who stays in your life and who leaves. Think of your energy as a frequency. People who resonate with your frequency will feel aligned with you, while those who don't will feel out of place. If you are consumed by self-doubt or negativity, you might unknowingly attract people who mirror or exploit that same energy. That's why toxic individuals thrive when you are at your lowest. They sense that you are vulnerable and open to being manipulated. But the moment you shift your energy to self-respect, positivity, and inner strength, their grip begins to weaken. They cannot connect with a frequency that is higher than theirs. Rising your energy begins with self-care. The way you treat yourself directly influences the kind of energy you project. When you take time to rest, nourish your body, and engage in practices that bring you peace, like meditation, journaling, or exercise, you radiate calm and confidence. This energy is magnetic to people who value peace, but it repels those who thrive on drama and chaos. Toxic people cannot survive in a space that feels too stable for their instability. Another way energy determines who stays is through your mindset. If you constantly focus on problems, negativity, and complaints, you will find yourself surrounded by people who do the same. But if you shift your focus towards solutions, gratitude, and growth, your energy changes, and so does your environment. People who resonate with negativity will leave because they no longer find comfort in your presence. On the other hand, people who are uplifting, encouraging, and aligned with growth will be drawn to you. Energy is also communicated through boundaries. When you carry yourself with quiet strength and confidence, people know instinctively not to overstep your limits. Toxic people, however, seek out those who appear unsure, overly accommodating, or afraid to say no. If your energy conveys weakness, they will take advantage. But if your energy communicates self-respect, they will think twice before trying to manipulate you. That's why your inner strength must radiate outward. It is a silent signal that you will not tolerate disrespect. Additionally, your energy influences the opportunities and relationships you attract. When you vibrate at a high frequency, filled with clarity, focus, and positivity, you naturally draw people and experiences that match that vibration. Toxic people who thrive on negativity and dysfunction feel disconnected in such an environment. They might try to stay, but they quickly realize they cannot manipulate or control someone whose energy is rooted in peace and self-worth. As a result, they drift away, leaving you with more space for genuine, uplifting connections. It's also important to remember that energy is contagious. When you are around toxic people, their negativity can seep into your spirit if you are not careful. But the reverse is also true. When you elevate your energy, your light becomes too bright for their darkness. They cannot dim you without exhausting themselves, and eventually they choose to leave because they cannot handle the contrast. This is why raising your energy is not about fighting toxic people directly. It's about creating an environment so healthy and positive that they cannot exist in it. The most powerful truth is this: you do not need to chase people out of your life. You only need to focus on raising your energy, and the wrong people will naturally fall away. Toxic people leave not because you force them out, but because your new energy makes it impossible for them to stay. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. Darkness cannot remain when light enters. In the end, your energy is your greatest filter. It determines who is drawn to you and who walks away. If you want toxic people to disappear, focus on elevating yourself, your thoughts, your habits, your boundaries, your self-care. The higher your energy rises, the fewer toxic people you will encounter. And once your energy becomes rooted in peace and strength, only those who match that vibration will remain in your life. That is how you create an environment where toxic people not only leave, but never come back. Self-respect is the foundation of a peaceful and fulfilling life. It is the inner knowing that you are worthy of love, respect, and dignity, regardless of what others say or do. When you have self-respect, you stop begging for attention, you stop tolerating mistreatment, and you stop chasing after people who devalue you. Toxic individuals cannot survive in the life of someone who truly respects themselves, because self-respect creates an invisible shield that rejects manipulation, disrespect, and abuse. It is the key to lasting freedom from toxic relationships. The problem many people face is that they place others above themselves. They give and give, hoping that by sacrificing their needs they will earn love or approval. But toxic people exploit this mindset. They recognize when someone lacks self-respect, and they use that vulnerability to gain control. They test how much they can take, how far they can push, and how little they can give back. Without self-respect, you become trapped in their cycle of exploitation. But the moment you decide that your peace and worth come first, you break free from their grip. Self-respect begins with recognizing your worth. You must accept that you are valuable, not because of what you do for others, but simply because of who you are. You are worthy of being treated with kindness, honesty, and respect. This recognition changes the way you allow others to treat you. When you know your worth, you don't accept constant criticism, dishonesty, or manipulation. Instead, you demand relationships that are balanced, healthy, and rooted in mutual respect. Toxic people hate this because they can no longer get away with their behavior. Another aspect of self-respect is the ability to say no without guilt. People who lack self-respect often say yes to things they don't want to do out of fear of rejection or conflict. This opens the door for toxic people to take advantage. But when you respect yourself, you understand that no is a complete sentence. You no longer feel the need to explain or apologize for protecting your boundaries. This power forces toxic people to either respect your limits or leave your life entirely. Self-respect also means refusing to settle. Too often, people hold on to toxic relationships because they believe they cannot do better. They accept lies, disrespect, or neglect, thinking it's the best they will ever have. But when you respect yourself, you raise your standards. You would rather be alone than in bad company. You would rather wait for genuine love than accept fake affection. This shift in mindset drives toxic people away because they know they cannot meet your new standards. Another key element of self-respect is accountability. Respecting yourself means being honest with yourself about the role you play in allowing toxicity into your life. It doesn't mean blaming yourself, but it does mean taking responsibility for protecting your peace. When you hold yourself accountable, you stop making excuses for others and start making choices that honor your well-being. Toxic people lose their control because you no longer hand them permission to mistreat you. Over time, self-respect creates lasting freedom. Once you develop it, you no longer fear losing people who do not treat you well. You no longer chase after apologies that never come or explanations that never make sense. Instead, you walk away with dignity, knowing that your life is too valuable to be wasted on toxic energy. This kind of freedom is permanent because once you learn to respect yourself, you never go back to allowing others to disrespect you. And here is the powerful truth: toxic people rarely return to someone who has built strong self-respect. Why? Because they know they cannot manipulate, control, or drain you anymore. You are no longer the same version of yourself that tolerated their behavior. You have grown, and your self-respect has created a barrier they cannot cross. In the end, self-respect is not just about protecting yourself. It is about creating a life where peace, joy, and love can thrive. It is about standing tall in your worth and refusing to bow to toxicity. When you cultivate self-respect, you claim your freedom, not just temporarily, but for life. And once that freedom is yours, toxic people will never again have a place in your world.